Welcome to Ultimate DIY. Today we're going to cover the simple 110 household electrical outlet. It's not hard to put in if you follow a few simple rules. Now there are some safety things that you need to go over, and so the very first thing I'm going to do is show you a few of the safety type of tools that you're going to need. The number one is going to be some type of a cheap way to test and make sure that the power is dead. Now, if you're just shutting off a breaker and you're replacing an outlet that does not, that hasn't been disconnected yet, you can simply take a blow dryer or a light that you know is working, plug it into it, and make sure that after you flip the breaker, it's off. If you also, on the other hand, you can have something like this. It'll plug in. It'll even tell you if the ground is connected correctly. It'll test all types of circuits, and you just plug it in and it'll be lit up. You flip that breaker, you'll know that it's off. That's if it's already there. Say you're putting in a plug brand new and you don't know if that's live or not, and you want to check. I use just a simple 110, 220 electrical tester, and you'll put it on the two ends of the wire, and it'll light up if it's 110 or 220, or it will not light up at all if it's dead. Those are two of the simple ways outside of just plugging something in. Another method, I love this one. You'll turn this on and it will actually beep, and you'll place it up against the wire. It'll beep and it'll let you know if there's power detected. The only drawback to this is it has a high to low rating on it, and if you're still getting a little bit of feedback through your neutral or your earth ground, it'll still beep a little bit. You'll know if it's full blown because it'll light it up all the way across, but that's the only drawback I found to these, is that it may detect a little bit of a low voltage, like a 2 or 3 volts that's running through your earth ground. The next method, if you are a handyman or you want to go to a whole nother level, you can use something like this multimeter, and you'll set it to voltage like so, and you'll put it across your two legs and it'll read a voltage, which is great. It'll also, as long as it's not a Romex wire, you can actually clamp this over it and it'll give you the amperage that's flowing through that wire. Kind of an interesting, it does resistance, it does a lot of advanced features. But if you're just a homeowner putting in a plug, this is way overkill for you. You probably don't need this. Some of the other safety things that I use are my screwdriver set, where here's a Phillips, here's a straight edge. You'll notice they have a protective plastic coating on each one of those. That keeps you from grounding out and creating an arc or a short. You can still use a regular screwdriver, but make sure that the circuit is dead. Now, if you're working inside of a big breaker panel box, I would highly recommend these, just because you just never know, or anything that you think there may be a possibility of some power. This set is made by DeWalt, and you open it up, has the handle, and then all of the pieces will actually slide into the handle. Multiple sizes, multiple types of ends, even have the square ends in it, which you'll find in electrical, there are a lot of the square ends now. People are going to that a little bit more. This is a great set to have if you're a handyman, or if you're a homeowner DIYer and you're just trying to build up your tool set. This one, I believe, goes all the way to, yeah, it's a 1,000-volt system, so it'll protect you up to 1,000 volts. So that's your basic protection tools. Now, some of the tools for actually putting in an outlet, you can use a power impact or power drill. I wouldn't recommend it if you don't have a lot of experience with a power drill, because you'll over torque the little screws and you'll break the outlet and you'll have to start over. I do this every day, so I'm pretty confident and used to it. Now today, I'm not going to use this. I'm going to use the actual screwdriver so I can show you in real time what it's like to be a homeowner and install something without the use of the power tools. You will definitely need, a cutting knife to cut back the sheathing. I use that first. I use strippers to actually strip the wire. Now they do have some strippers that are a little different that you'll clamp it on and it'll strip the wires all in one motion really quickly. I'm still kind of old school. I like these, but I'll probably do a video on the newer version of these pretty quick and let you have an idea. I do keep nippers around. I don't use these very often because generally you have cutters on your strippers, but if I can't get that into a certain place to cut, I want to have nippers to get in and cut it loose, especially if it's an old outlet and there's not much room in it. Now I will say this, when you're putting in an outlet, be very careful and try to leave as much of this wire as possible. Don't be cutting that wire out because you can make it so short that the next thing you're having to do is take sheetrock out to get more wire in there. So be very careful. If you don't have a lot of room, try to save every bit of that wire you can and don't be cutting it off unless you absolutely have to and have no choice. The other thing I use a lot, and you'll see why in a minute, I'm a little bit OCD, and I use needle nose to help crimp and pull my wire around those nuts really tightly so that they can never come off. There is a way that you don't have to use these, and I'll show that to you, but I personally like needle nose. Now this is a combination needle nose, strippers in the center, and it has cutters where you can actually cut wire off in the center with two different size holes. And it has a crimper at the bottom. It's a really nice tool. Honestly, I just haven't gotten used to these yet because I've used my needle nose for so many years. This particular pair, believe it or not, I've had for probably 8 to 10 years. And so I've gotten very used to them, and I've liked the point on it. This one's a little bit more squared off, but still a good option. If you start with this, you'll get used to this, and it'll probably be your go-to tool. So you really only need a handful of tools, maybe 4 or 5 tools, and they're very cheap tools. They're not that expensive to be able to put your own outlet in. So now that you kind of have that as an understanding, let's go ahead and jump into installing an outlet real quick. And I'm going to try to do it in real time. Let's jump in and let's see how it is in real time putting in and out. Okay, so I have already tested my wire. I know that it's dead. This is a new installation and the wire is not even hooked to the panel itself right now, so I know there's no chance of anything harming me. But the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to want to strip this plastic back, the outer coating. Now you have 2 wires in here that are coated, and you have one in the center that is your earth ground, which has no coating on it at all. So I generally will try gently to cut in the center. Be very careful, don't cut yourself. But I'll follow it down just enough to cut through there. I don't want to cut into my other wires. There we go, pull it back. Now this is a good, I use my needle nose here, and this is a good spot to show you kind of, I want to push it as far back as I can. And this is where I'll use the nippers. I'll reach in and cut them, because if I'm trying to use these to cut it, I can do it, but the ends of them hold me out further from the wall. So I use my nippers and cut. Now, you do have paper that usually wraps around the center earth ground. You can tear it, or you can just simply cut it. So the wires we have, your white is always going to be your neutral wire. The black is going to be your hot wire. The uncovered wire, this is your earth ground. Now, if you're going to a main panel, this wire and this wire are basically going to go to the same bar. That's how come using this tester, sometimes you may pick up a couple of bolts here, and this will light up on the very first little light. So now I've got this opened up. The next step is I'm going to go ahead and strip this. So 14 gauge is a white jacket. This is going to be a yellow jacket, which is going to be my 12. So if you can't probably see it on here, but there's all the different gauges. You have a 14, a 12, and a 10. So we're going to end up going to the 12, which is right below the bottom. And all you do is simply put it on, push down, and give it a little twist and it will pull it off. Probably about close to 1/2 inch. I go a little more because you're going to see I like to turn mine and use the needle nose, and I'll show you here in a second. So I like to have a little bit more room than the normal. So do it about like that. Now, if you're looking at most of these have little wire gauges on them. So this is saying I need that much room. And see, I'm a little longer. I don't know if you can see that in the screen. I'm quite a bit longer because I'm going to curl. And a lot of that is because these particular sockets even have a place on the back. You can actually wrap it around this. A lot of people will take and use that gauge and they just put it in enough like that, and then they clamp it down. They leave it straight. That's why that length needs to be shorter so it's not sticking out the back. Or you can place these in the holes. Now, those holes are only going to work with the lighter gauge wire. This thicker gauge wire does not work on these holes. Now, you do have the alternative when you do this type of a plug. They will work. You can actually place it in, clamp, and you're done. And I have the whole other video on that, which I should have already left you a link at the top. If I haven't yet, I will, so that you can go to that video. So my wires are stripped. What I do here at the next point, this is where I differ from a lot of other guys. I will take my wire and I'll start in the middle, put a little bend, and then I move outward a little and keep bending. And I make myself a nice hook. Now you can also use your tool here to put it in and do this same hook. It's a little awkward to me. I guess I could use that side like so and make my hook that way too. But like I said, I always have these with me. So you make your hooks and you have two different colors on these. You have like a copper color, gold, and then you have a silver color. I always remember the silver because it looks more white. So I put my white wire on there, which is my neutral. Now you always make sure that your hook is facing the same direction that you will be turning the screw. So if I'm clockwise, like so, my hook needs to go the same direction, like that. If I go the opposite direction with it and do it, let's see if I can turn this over so you can see, and I do it like that, what's going to happen is when I go to tighten it, it's going to try to push, like it just pushed out right there. It's going to try to push this wire off. So we don't want that. We want to follow the same direction. Let me turn this back like so. Now I've got my plug. This is the white side. We put it on. Now this is where I differ from a lot of guys. A lot of guys would just clamp that down. I take it one step further and I grab that wire with my needle nose and I bend it all the way around so that it cannot come out. It'll make it very, very difficult for it to pull loose when I'm putting it into the box. And then I tighten it down. Now this is where it's nice and snug. And this is where I could have used my power tool, but you need to make sure that you don't break the screw off. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and hook up my earth ground. And the earth ground is the green little screw. And what this does is it protects you in case there's a short. So the wire does not go all the way through you. It goes from this wire here all the way back to the box and down into the ground. There's a grounding rod. So it basically saves your life. A lot of older homes do not have this earth ground at all on here. And that's what this little spot is on your outlet. That is feeding this. That's why you should never bypass the earth ground. All right, so now the last one we have is our hot wire. And we're going to take the hot wire. Now remember, we are screwing this direction. So if I put this on here like that, I'm going the wrong way. So I need to flip this wire like so. And I need to put it on like that. And what I'll do just now, you see how that wire is aimed up? A lot of guys would tighten that down. I don't like to do that. I'm going to take my needle nose, grab the wire, and I'm going to pull it over. Just like that. Now, tighten it up. That wire is not going to go anywhere. Now, what I like to do, I don't like leaving these out just because it leaves a hot point on this, because this feeds all the way through to this outlet. You can actually take this little clip here with your needle nose, just like this, grab a hold of it, bend it, break it, and now you have two separate circuits here if you need that. Today, we're not doing that. This is one outlet. So what I do though is I'll tighten these back down so that it does not have a spot sticking out. If somehow somebody's playing with this and reaching, pulling this out, and it happens to be hot, you don't want to leave that out any further than you have to. It's more of an area to get shocked. Now, also, that being said, you can, and I'll do it just for the sake of the video here, just to show you how it's done. Back this out. Actually, this is where I'll use my screw gun to save a few seconds. There's a little metal clip back here holding those in place. You can see it right here. But I'm going to back those off a little, and I'm going to show you one other tip. Now, a plastic box, you don't really need to do this. I guess you can do it for safety if you want, just to make sure nothing can ever touch if it gets pulled. This, by the way, is another reason when you're vacuuming, you don't just yank the cord out of the wall. You reach over and pull it out, because you'll ground and turn to the sides with these. If it's a metal box, it's going to ground out your plug. Plastic, you don't have to worry about it quite so much. So a lot of people will not put this tape, and I generally do not as well, put this tape around the outside if it is a plastic box. But just in case you're doing a metal, I'm going to show you how it's done. All you do is you take the tape and put it around the outside. Make sure you don't get these stuck in there. That's why I backed them off. And you'll go around a couple of turns to give yourself some protection. And now the good thing about this is, even though it's not a metal box, if I'm pulling this out and say for some reason, and you can just pull this and snap it, but I'm going to cut it so it's nice and clean. It doesn't stretch my tape. So now if I'm reaching in to pull this box out and I get my hands here, I'm not going to get shocked. At least the theory is I shouldn't, unless there's a little hole or anything, but at least it gives you a little bit of protection. So at this point, it is wired and it is ready to go. So now what I do is I will generally bend my wires. This is a little bit thicker gauge wire. So I work it back in. That's nice and snug. Where it should be, and then I use the screws. Now you can use a screwdriver here. I'm just speeding this up a little, just like so. And if I can see where it is, there it is. Now you want to try to center these, especially the square ones, because the covers don't fit right if they're not square. And get it in there where it's nice and snug, right about there. And that's pretty good. Right there. Just like so. And let's see if I can find a cover plate. All right, so the cover plate, they usually come in a little package, plastic, and they should have the new screws with them. Now, I will tell you, be gentle with these screws when you're screwing in the wall. And this is where your flat edge is going to come in, because these screws do scratch and they look awful. You take and you're going to place it over the top. Now, if you're using the old style plugs, there's a screw in the center. And you start the screw. Let's see, did that get it? Not quite. Well, now obviously this wall is not painted, so I will have to pull all this back off, but I just want to show you how it goes on. So get it on there like so. Now this is something that is one of a pet peeve of mine when I have somebody working with me. If they do this, they'll put the screw in and they have one going this way, and they'll get this one down and they just stop wherever. So I have one straight, one cockeyed, and to me that just looks unprofessional. It looks like you didn't take any care at all into what you were doing. So I like to straighten these so that they're both the same, and I'm very gentle, like I said, so I don't scratch off the paint. Now the next thing you can actually do is go with if this was a painted wall, a fine bead of clear caulking that'll dry clear and go around this all the way around. Or you can use white and paint if you need to paint, but clear is a lot easier, but it'll seal this so nothing can get in and it stops drafts. Okay, there you go. Pretty simple. Just about anyone can put a plug in. All you need is a few little hand tools, and you need to know how to be safe. Most important thing is safety. If you got anything out of today's video, be sure you hit that like button. When you hit that like button, it really helps the channel. If you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and subscribe. And while you're at it, ring that little bell notification, because that lets you know of all of our upcoming videos. If you have any comments or questions, things that you might have done different, things that you might like to see in the future, be sure you leave those comments. Even I try to read all of those as they come through, but other people may be reading those and see something or learn something from your comment as well.